And welcome to Hit and Hustle from irishsportsdaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Jamie University. It is Tuesday, February 21st. I had the date all ready to go, Jamie. That my pod prep is on fire right now. So I had the date all ready to go. We're here. We're going to be talking about the press conference yesterday, announcing Gerad Parker as the offensive coordinator, the comments by Marcus Freeman, just like what he's looking for in the offense, and a little bit on the addressing the whole situation with the buyout and the Ludwig stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about the offensive line and what Notre Dame is looking for there, and an offensive line coach. And but first, Jamie, we're gonna start out with some big news, big breaking news from Hit and Hustle, in that we are now a podcast. We have a podcast feed. It's on Apple Pods and it's on Spotify. I've put a link in the description of this show. Check it out. Hit the subscribe button. Rate and review the show. So if you're a lot of people, Jamie, with so many requests for us to go on an audio only pod, and so that's what we're doing. We brought it for the people. Special shout out to Brendan McAlinden at Very Piratey of 1 Foot Down. He made our pod art edit meme master general. Brendan, he did a great job. So thank you so much to him for that. So what's going to happen is it's basically just going to be this show that is just an audio format. So when we're done recording here, I will upload the audio, maybe make a couple edits, and then we'll push that out on a podcast. And I'll let that I'll let people check
people
that out.
want to listen to it on the go. They want to listen to it in their car. They want to listen to it when they work out. Maybe they can't get to YouTube. I think it's great, right?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Jacob Paulus, longtime listener, first time live. Thanks for doing these shows. Go Irish. Thank you to Jacob. He hit me up on Twitter, said this is the first time he gets to catch us live. So that's very cool. Ready on three. All right. Rajon says ready on three. Hit the like button. 1, 2, 3. Hit the like. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. All right. Chris Wojak, before we get into it. I guess he hit me up on Twitter. I don't know if I missed this or what, but Jamie, since Greg didn't answer me yesterday, have you watched film of Parker's offense to indicate that the deep ball will be in play? Have you seen anything there, Jamie? Anything, indicative?
Well, I mean, he didn't call plays for that many games.
Right.
So
6 games.
Yeah.
6 games.
So, and I think in those games, he was very opponent dependent. What they did, like they ran it a ton against Kansas, they threw it a ton against somebody else. Like that's just right. What they did. So he was pretty adaptable to that, which I thought was great. I mean, I think that's the way you need to be, right? Like some weeks you need to throw it 40 times, some weeks you need to run it 55 times, right? It's just you do what it takes to win, right? And and hopefully you have an offense that can do it all. But I don't know. I think that's something that is TBD. And what based on what we'll see with him, like he kind of talked about in the press conference about how, which I think is a great thing. Like he originally started. First of all, when he was recruited to Kentucky, he was a receiver at Kentucky. Got injured, didn't play much, but I think he was Mr. Kentucky in football. So He was a pretty darn good high school player. He got recruited to the air raid, right? Like Hal Mummy. So he got recruited to that system, played in a much different. He talked about when he was a GA with Randy Sanders and Joker Phillips. He talked about, when he was at UT Martin and they ran a 2-back offense. He talked about how they, he was they were in 10 personnel at Marshall and they were the hurry up, no huddle. Neil Brown was he's more of a hurry up, no huddle guy. He's like you said, he's been in air raid. He's been more physical offense. Ricky Ron, at Penn State, the kind of more RPO based, spread based offense. So he's been in a lot of things. So I think what we can tell is like, he's going to lean into the personnel based on, everything he said. And I based on their interest, Marcus Freeman's previous interest in Colin Klein and Andy Ludwig, he's not going to be like, well, now I'm going to go with Gerad Parker because, he's going to just spread it out. We're going to chuck the ball 50 times. That's not why he would go after him. So, how aggressive he is going to be attacking downfield, I think it's TBD. We'll have to see. But I certainly hope that, I don't think you can be a good offense. You can't be an elite offense without explosive passing game. You just can't play football.
Right. Brennan says, shame we never got to see him catch a pass from Battleship Lorenzen. That's true. R.I.P. Jared Lorenzen, a true legend in the game of college football. And Jacob Paulus brings up a question. Is it really worth looking into Parker's past OC experience as an OC, considering it was always someone else's offense? I think from a play calling perspective, I don't think it is in terms of like his tendencies and that sort of thing, other than to note, like he did what he had to do in certain games. But just like, as the run pass stuff, like certain specific play calls from specific games, what they ran, like, I don't really look at that too much. It is worth noting, like you did, that he's been in a bunch of offenses, right? He's been in a bunch of different, schemes and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And trust me and whatever. And I'm not saying this to disparage, because people, they need the content. So someone is going to do some kind of film breakdown on, oh, look at this game. And I just think that's worthless. That's just my opinion, whatever. Like, don't get me wrong. If Mike Frank asked me to do a thing, I'm going to do it.
If we need, and I'll do a pod. We'll do a pod.
If he tells me to do it, I'll do it. But if he doesn't tell me to do it, I think, just my personal opinion is it's kind of a waste of time to really, you can't really judge. It's just such a small sample size. And kind of like what we said last week, Greg, when we were kind of talking about, the possibility of him, it's like judging Mike Elston after he took over from Brian Van Gorder midway or whatever, 5 games into that 2016 season. And he did what he needed to do, whatever. That isn't an indication of like, this is what Mike Elston is as a coordinator. And it's like, no, that was just, he was put in that situation and he made the best of it. That's it.
Yeah. Pat Desmond, you have a question up here that we're going to get to later. It's a good question. So I've started, so we're going to get to that. So don't worry. That's going to be coming in terms of, where when we get to the offensive line discussion, we're going to get to that. EK with a comment, Notre Dame is the only place that would hire him as an OC. Tommy didn't even want him as a tight end coach. What I would say to this is, Jamie, you made a really good point last week about Clark Lee and his ascension to the defensive coordinator spot. No one would have hired him as a defensive coordinator the year after Mike Elko left. And that's true. And that obviously went really well for Notre Dame. So specific situations, that happens. Like, who would hire Mike Bobo to be Georgia's offensive coordinator? Nobody, right?
Yeah.
How many openings were there this year for offensive coordinators? No one looked at Mike Bobo, not one, right? So there's just specific schools.
Dan Lanning. It was before
exactly.
You can point to a million people that say this. I'm not trying to specifically get on you, EK, because I know that's like,
I've heard that.
Everybody says that, right?
But
that's just like anything. It's like, do you work at it? I guarantee you work at a job or have worked at a job where someone has been promoted where they never done that job before.
Yeah.
They've never done that job before. And you're like, well, Enterprise isn't hiring this guy to be their thing, but you know what? Hertz is hiring this. It's like, well, this guy worked at Hertz before. The manager at Hertz knows him. Like, obviously, there's things that go into it. It's not as simple as thing. It's an easy way to just discount something. And frankly, there's just been enough guys that have been hired that didn't have any experience or very little experience that have been successful, that it's enough to say that, like it might matter and it might not. We just don't know.
Yeah. So speaking of the press conference, let's talk about Gerad Parker. A lot of people were super, were super just kind of noticing how he was impressive. Like he had an impressive press conference, the way he spoke, the way he commanded the room. I thought there was a lot there. But was there anything specifically that he said for you that you were like, you know what, like that is an important thing that he said? Did anything stand out for you in that regard?
The big thing for me was him talking about taking advantage of teams that are going to play against them with a loaded box and how they're going to combat that. And it was just it was almost like a throwaway thing that he said, but that's pretty much, especially if you're going to come in and play heavy and you're going to play with multiple tight ends and 12 personnel is going to be like a base formation for you. You better be prepared to have that. And some of that is what Tommy Rees did last year and stuff like that, with a lot of like the check with me stuff, the scan offense or whatever, right? Like that, getting into the right play, like that's part of it for sure. But I mean, there's a lot of it too, where it's just like, don't run into numbers, have a better plan with it, change things up formationally to, mess with it. And okay, so like Clemson had a loaded box when they were trying to stop, when Notre Dame was running the ball down their throats at the end of the game, they had a loaded box. Well, we kind of talked about it at the time, how they, tweak stuff formationally to get gaps for them to be able to be successful running the ball. So, attacking the perimeter, attacking downfield, right? Play action, all this kind of stuff. That to me was something that it was a very small thing, but that stood out to me. And then the other thing that really stood out to me, I think, was his humility, like just in terms of like being like, came off, like you said, he came off as confident, certainly command of the room. Like you could see, this is a guy who could meet with the entire offense, and command the respect of people when he speaks. But it's one thing to do that, but it's another thing to be like, I don't know everything. And anyone who thinks comes in and I'm the smartest person in the room, which, that's kind of what Charlie Weiss did. And it's not like Charlie Weiss wasn't, he is a very smart man and a very smart football coach, but that isn't the best way to approach things. And maybe it was the best way to sell things at that time, whatever. We're not going to retroactively just whatever, but I think if Parker came in and was like, we have a decided schematic advantage, I'd be like, oh, okay, we got problems here. That's not the way to approach anything. His talk of like kind of collaboration, talking about getting the other coaches invested. And what it really reminded me of is Mike Elko, right? And because Mike Elko is very similar. And that's why do you think Clark Lee was able to become a defensive coordinator, whatever? It's because he learned and did all these things and had ownership over something. And like the part where Parker talked about, well, everyone wants to be, there's nothing more exciting than being like a play gets called and it's successful. And that was like, I was a big part of that play.
Yeah.
Like I might have not have called that, but I helped put that play in. I made the suggestion. It's a little bit like the Super Bowl where, Eric Bieniemy, there's the note on their thing about they're talking about the, the rock and roll thing where they were going with the motion and man, and they got that twice. They got touchdowns on that specific thing where they're setting the guy in motion and then sending him back the other way. And that was something they saw on film and that he specifically noticed and whatever. And it's like, anyone who was coached or played football, it's just like the most satisfying thing in the world. Like I've coached and I've been like, they do this on whatever. Yeah. And we're going to run I've coached special teams and we're going to run a fake here and we're going to score a touchdown. And it's happened. And we scored a touchdown. And I was like, at the moment you're like, this is the best moment of my life. Because you're just like, all the plan comes together, right? Because you're part of it. And it's just like, that's just one small thing. It's part of it. And that gets everybody to buy in. And and everything I've heard about Parker too, is that he's really well liked and the people like him too. So I'd love that part about accountability, keeping people accountable, but also keeping them invested in what's going on. I think that really stood out to me.
Yeah. He talked a lot about how he was very involved in the game plan at West Virginia, even though when he wasn't calling plays specifically. And I think he was in charge of the red zone too. So that's where it comes from. A lot of people in the chat are talking about Gino Guidugli and how, there's, Brendan brought up a point about how he's it's kind of a dual hire, really. Like it's because he's not coaching quarterbacks, like the combination between Gaduli being the quarterback coach and then Gerad Parker being the offensive coordinator, like that has to have some symmetry as well. And there's a collaboration there. And I'll just get to Pat Desmond. Jamie and Greg, do you think Gino G will be the pass game coordinator? Then whoever the O-line coach is will be the run game coordinator. Schematically, all three work together to build a game plan. Then GP calls it. I think that's a good possibility. And especially given who I think Notre Dame is going to go after to coach the offensive line, they might need to, in order to get, because it seems like they're going to shoot pretty high, right? And, Gerad Parker is talking about how it's like 2 pages or multiple pages of O-line candidates. Like, if you're really going to shoot high, then you're going to have to give someone a title. And that might need to be the case. And I don't have a problem with that. And it goes to the collaboration piece that Gerad Parker was talking about, in just terms of like, hey, everyone's going to be invested. Everyone's going to have a certain kind of role, and everyone's going to have a place in the offense to put their stamp on it, for better or worse. So I think that's a good question. I think it's a really good possibility. EK, you're to be honest, like, you're being a little bit negative about it for the sake
that
of
has literally nothing to do with anything.
We talked about it we talked about the risks when the hire was announced, right? We talked about not necessarily the 0-6 as the interim, like that was 2015 on a really bad Purdue team, and he's not the head coach.
He's not the head coach.
It's not a thing. I
can tell you what, Parker, when he was in Pee Wee football, I mean, he fumbled 4 times in one game. And I'm out. No, you can't take it. Like, come on. That has nothing to do with anything with him being the offensive coordinator. I'm not saying people can have questions and concerns about him being promoted. And, I wish that they got someone with more experience, wish that they got someone who was a home run hire. He is not a home run hire. And first of all, I don't think there was anybody out there that, like, I don't think Eddie Ludwig was a home run hire. I don't think Colin Klein was a home run hire. So I'm not saying either of that anyways. And there's a ton of unknown with Parker, but I mean, and the thing that you are concerned about as most is his inexperience, frankly.
Right. Absolutely. It is what it is. Like, it's not, there's nothing you can talk around.
It could go bad, but I promise you, he's going into a much better situation than taking over halfway through the year at West Virginia, or being the interim head coach at Purdue on a team that had already probably checked out and quit the season and was talent-wise one of the worst in the Big Ten. So that is not something to do with. He's taking over a situation where it's like, I was saying on Power with Mike yesterday, he should be judged based on the team that he has right now, and based on the team that he's working with and the guys that he's working with. The offense should be a top 20 offense, no doubt, in my opinion. And if it's not, then EK, you know what? Rip him. Go ahead, rip him.
Yeah.
Say that he did.
And we will.
It's not like
criticize him. We went in on Tommy Reese. Just fine. Yeah.
But I just think it's one of these things where if you're doing it before you even see it, it's just like, it's totally unfair to him. It's or it's also anyone who says, I think it's going to work out because he's great in the press conference. Like, no, we don't know that. He was great in the press conference. We could say that. That doesn't mean anything for the season. Yeah. We're just reacting to what we know.
Yeah. The other thing that I like that he said that I think will resonate with the team specifically is it's very good to have a symmetry in message. And when he said, because I can't remember who asked him the question about you were there at the hockey game, right? Yeah. And you were trying to get Ludwig to.
I know who it was, but yeah, go.
Okay, so you were at the hockey game, right? And you were trying to get Ludwig there, and you wanted the job, but you were basically helping you, like you were trying to help hire somebody else basically for the job that you wanted. And he said, you have to be you have to serve the coach. You're serving the head coach and you're serving the University of Notre Dame. And that's what my role was in that moment. So that's what I was doing. Right. But he said he went home and he let his mind wander. And it was like he wrote things in his note in a little notepad in his phone, right? Like little notes, just like I feel like I can do it, but right now my job is to do X. And he was like, and at this university, we tell the players, like, you got to be ready when it's your turn. And he said, what a sin it would be if I wasn't prepared if Marcus Freeman called my number. And that's exactly what happened. And he did call his number. And it honestly reminded me of Ian Book, about how it's like that's Ian Book's career. It's like he thought that he could be the quarterback of Notre Dame, but it was somebody else at a certain time. And so he had a role. He came in on the goal line and he played his role. And when it was for his turn, he got his number called. He came in and did the job, right? And I think when you have a message like that for the team, it's like, hey, I was here serving the university and serving my head coach. They asked me to do something and I was doing it to the best of my ability. But when it was my turn, I was ready to go. That is message symmetry. And that will resonate with the team. It's like, this guy, it wasn't about his ego. He wasn't pouting. He wasn't looking for another job because Notre Dame wasn't looking at him for the job that he wanted, right? He wasn't doing that. He was sticking with the university. And I thought that was really good. Like as someone who has been on teams before, like if the offensive coordinator stands in front of me and sends me that message, I can do it. I can go with it because you know what? He lived it. He actually did. And I think that matters to the team. You can't preach something that you're not willing to put into practice yourself. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I did too. I agree.
Yeah. I do want to get to Marcus Freeman's comments specifically about, not about the buyout thing, because frankly, I don't care. He said what he said. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Like, it's not it. People at this point, people are baked in how they feel about it. We're not changing anyone's mind, and I don't really care to do that. What I want to talk specifically about is he pretty clearly has a vision for what the offense is, right? Never looked at any coordinator, like air raid system, any pass heavy coordinator, like never looked at anyone like that in terms of just like the names that were really floated, right? Like Colin Klein, not pass heavy. He was a run heavy guy. Andy Ludwig, definitely very run heavy at Utah, right? Multiple tight ends and that sort of thing. And they talked about Gerad Parker. They're basically keeping the same offense. I mean, when he says, Gerad Parker is going to run, it's going to be Gerad Parker's offense, not Tommy Rees's offense. But then he also talks about how Gerad Parker said, this is what we can do, and this is how I build on what we can do. That tells me they're keeping the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which is, whatever. That's fine. I like the Tommy Rees offense, but he's always talking about like pro style and run first and, leading with the run game, run to set up the pass and that sort of thing. And I'm just looking for words like,
I don't think
explosive. Yeah. I'm looking for words like dangerous, right? Like, and to me, it's just like it doesn't matter to me, I guess, that he doesn't say those. I just think it's indicative that he doesn't think of it like that. And so, are you all right?
I accidentally kicked the tape.
You were so fired up about this. You kicked the tape.
No, don't worry. There was an earthquake. I kicked the tape.
But how do you take that? Should I take it some kind of way?
No, I think it's a good point. Because that's the kind of stuff that I would want to hear, right? I want to hear that. I want to hear they want to be explosive. They want to just score. I mean, I don't think like running the football, being an offensive line driven program, like I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a good thing, right? Like that's a good thing, but it has to marry with the explosive part of it because grind out teams don't win in culture. You don't win it all. You can win a lot of games, but they don't win it all. So I do think, so Sean Lewis, for example, the guy who was at Kent State, who's now at Colorado, and I think, and he was a guy who They definitely talked to, but maybe it wasn't a fit. And he is ran a run first offense. I mean, in terms of just percentages wise at Kent State. And he's from the, veer and shoot, coaching tree or whatever. Dino Babers. He's a Dino Babers disciple. Don't worry. I don't think that has anything to do with his game management, but whatever. But it's very much more of a spread to run system, right?
Yeah.
And that's much different than what Notre Dame is doing. And I get why you wouldn't want maybe that, because wouldn't want that specific type of guy to have, if you have Mitchell Evans, for example, and Eli Raritan, who you're like, we can line these guys up and whatever and bully people, because they've already shown they can do that as inline players. So why wouldn't we do that? And you don't want to have them just line up your 12 personnel and they're always like outside the numbers, because then it's like, well, what are we doing here? Are we wasting these guys? I get it from that perspective, right? At the same time, I just think that, I hope a lot of it is based on, this is the personnel that we have now and not what they're going to be 2 or 3 years from now. Because I look at, say, Tobias Merriweather, Braylon James, Jaden Greathouse, right? Caleb Smith, the younger, the faster one.
The freshman.
Jeremiah Love, right? And then I look at if Cam Williams, right? And I look at that, and then hopefully they do well at wide receiver this year. And then I hope that it's like, well, look at our wide receiver room, and you adapt to what you have yet, right? And I think that that is important. That's important because it's good to lean into, this is the strengths of the team now, but you don't want to have Tobias Merriweather and these guys. And I mean, obviously Tobias Merriweather, unproven up to this point, right? But I think he can be a guy who's I think he can be a big play receiver for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And you don't want to waste a guy like that and be like, you know what? We didn't really give him those opportunities. Or like, say, Chase Claypool in 2019. I mean, the best thing that they did that year, and I'll give them the credit for it, is they were like, well, Chase Claypool's just basically unstoppable. If we run 4 verts with him and Cole Kmet on the same side, and they don't double Chase, we're throwing it to him. And they did it, and he won like 75% of the time. And that was great. And that was in Notre Dame. If you go back to it, they had one of the most explosive passing offenses in the country that year, primarily because of him. So that's what I don't know is if, and he's not going to say it in a press conference, are they going to change and adapt to that? Because I don't. You want to get these fast, athletic wideouts, these guys who can create, they can do stuff after the catch, they can get deep, you can change, you can be this vertical passing game, and then you're stuck running 12 personnel congested duo on 2nd and 10. No one wants that.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe some people want that, but most people shouldn't want that.
It just, to me, I like when I look at Notre Dame's offense under Tommy Rees, and I'm bringing that up because it seems like that's the style that they're going to continue to play. It was in my opinion, it was effective, but it wasn't dangerous. I don't think any defense came into playing Notre Dame like truly scared of just getting gashed, overrun. Like anyone who was good, right? Some of the bad teams probably, but like anyone who was good being like, you know what? I'm afraid of what Notre Dame's going to run against us when they get in this formation, when they put this personnel on the field. And some of it is like, you don't have the personnel to do it. Right. And that's fine. But in my opinion, like going into this year, it should be a goal of theirs to be more explosive and to be more like just a dangerous team. It's like you have Sam Hartman and you have Tobias Merriweather, and you have Caleb Smith Sr., and you have Lorenzo Styles, and you have Jaden Thomas, right? Like, you have these guys. Like, why can't Notre Dame at times just go 4 wide? Why not? Why not make it aspirational? It's like, we need to, like, we're going to be an offensive line led team, tight end led team, no problem. But we can't be afraid to say, you know what, we're going to put our wideouts out there and we're going to do damage with this, right?
Yeah.
Chris Tyree or Audric Estime or Logan Diggs, right? There's no reason that they can't, right? And I think they need to do that. And I think that should be part of the public message too, because they do have a perception problem with their offense, right? People bring it up in the chat, like they don't get the top wide receivers. Well, why is that? Because their offense isn't known as the type of place you're going to go to
part of the
be a
reason
top
for
wideout.
Sure,
yeah. So, and look, some of that has to do with recruiting misses and unlucky with some prospects, right? Like Kevin Stepherson's and St. Brown leaves early and guys like that. Like, just could never get like the really explosive wide receiver group on the field at the same time, right? And I don't want to completely go, back in time on that stuff. But the point is like, I do think that needs to be a part of the public message.
Yeah.
Like, we are going to be a dangerous team. We are going to hurt you, vertically. And that is going to be a goal of ours. So,
and I also think too, that it is one of those things where you want to know that they can do it, because this is the thing. You're going to play some teams that their nickel sucks. Or they're like, they don't have a true nickel. They just play like a linebacker there who shouldn't be out there. And you got to just be like, okay, well, now this guy has to cover Jaden Thomas, and you're going to exploit that like again and again and again, right? Like, you want to be able to say, like, we have these kind of guys and we're going to attack you based on the weaknesses of your personnel, and not just, so you play into your strengths and you have an identity, but you also can adapt and morph into whoever you need to be to score 40 in a game, right? And that's what I think. I mean, you won't know that, but I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not built into Marcus Freeman because he's a defensive guy, so we don't know that. But I just hope with Gerad Parker or whoever, would be Notre Dame's offensive coordinator in the future, or whoever, I just think you just have to be able to be somebody who's like, oh, we're playing Wisconsin, like old Wisconsin or whatever, and being like, I mean, they don't have the DBs that can match up, so we're going to do this, right? Their safeties suck, so we're going at, like, that's how you have to approach it, rather than, I mean, of course, Notre Dame's going to play a lot of teams that can't play because they have to play a style to combat all of these, spread offenses. And so teams can't adapt and they're not ready to play against a heavier team. So that's fine. Take advantage of it, whatever, run it down their throats, hopefully be explosive in the running game, but you have to be able to do both, right? You got to be able to do both and be explosive in every way.
Coach Hump says, Jamie, I appreciate you and Mike Frank being so honest about the tightrope Notre Dame requires you guys to walk in regard to what you can actually report on ISD's Power Hour. So for people who haven't listened to Power Hour yet, I suggest you go do so. That's also on Apple Pods. And they were talking about basically when we get access to practice, basically Notre Dame says, hey, don't report on X thing. Don't report on Y thing, right? I think that's what Coach Humph is talking about. And it probably is difficult. And like you said on the show, like a lot of it is no one cares, man.
Yeah,
like,
no one cares, whatever. But I don't care. Like, but also too, I don't care. Like, it's not a thing. Like, if we do what they tell us because we're happy they give us access, right? So I hope we get as much access as possible.
Mm.
And I think sometimes it is a tightrope, but it's fine. That's part of the job. The media and the football program, you have to adhere to it and you have to respect it. And it's like reporting on injuries. And I know, like, too, like, whatever. I don't want to mention anybody, but like, there's some people who like tweet pictures of guys like coming into things when they're injured. And it's like, yeah, they ask you specifically not to report on these injuries because sometimes the parents don't know and all that. But you know, but other people just they're oblivious or whatever. I just wanted to hit on just the one thing EK is saying here. If your team should be pound position, well, yeah, of course they should. That's what wins.
We're not talking about it.
We're not talking about that though. We're talking about, okay, here's the other thing. It's because the game it's not about winning. It's not even about winning 10 games, winning 11 games, winning 12 games to get into the college football playoff. It's about what everybody wants that. Of course they want that, right? But what are you going to do when you play? When you get there, guess who you got to beat? You got to beat Georgia. You got to beat Alabama, right? Those are the teams that you got to beat. And guess what? You can't go heavy and run it down their throats. You can't, because
you got to be able to hurt. You got to be able to gash them.
You got to be if they have a weakness, you have to be able to exploit it no matter what that is. Whether that's up front, whether that is in the secondary, whatever. That's what you have to do, and you have to be explosive because you've seen it. Notre Dame, you can't drive against those teams and have repeated 10, 12 play drives and score points. It's too hard against the best teams. LSU is crap, EK. They are not on this level of those LSU, those Ed Orgeron LSU teams in the Citrus Bowl and the Music.
9-3.
Those are that's not in the same league. I don't care that they play in the SEC. We're talking about the top teams in the country. And when you get to there, when Notre Dame has gotten to the college football playoff and not be able to, it's yes, you lean into and you run it. You people have this idea. They have this Lou Holtz idea of like, we got to be like this. I mean, you can lean into that, do that, be physical, be heavy. That's fine. But you better be explosive with that too. And if you're not going to beat Georgia. You're not going to beat Alabama. And what is everyone here for? That's what people are here for.
Right. And the thing that we're talking about is trying to get Notre Dame to the next level. The reason Notre Dame can't get to the next level is because they're not an explosive offense. They don't have an explosive passing game. That's just true. And they've had great 2017, perfect example. They were the best running team in the country at times. You go against Georgia, can't run the ball. Go against Miami, can't run the ball. You go against Stanford, can't run the ball. Like that's what's been holding them back. That's why they need to grow in this area. And that's why I think it needs to be a focus, right? It's because they haven't been able, like, it'd be one thing if in 2017 or whatever, Notre Dame won the national title, and then because of their running game, and then it's like that dropped off because Harry Easton left. We got to get back to that. But that's not what happened. And so that's why we're talking about there needs to be an emphasis on explosiveness and danger in the passing game. That's the reason, right? It's not because I'm I have it. I just love passing. It's like that's a glaring weakness of theirs.
Yeah.
So
also go back to the second LSU game too, the Citrus Bowl. They did not run it down LSU's throats. They did not at all. They didn't bully them at all. They won because of explosive plays. They literally won because Boykin made the catch of the century, and then
the catch of the century, and then he had the sideline pass as well on the second and 19 or whatever.
And like Dexter Williams had like a 30-something yard run on a counter tray, and Ian Book had a big play off of another counter tray with a quarterback keep. Like those were the plays that got them. They did not sustain drives in that game. They did not run it down their throats. That was not like the previous game. And that offensive line won the Joe Moore Award.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be both. You have to be both.
You have to have both. All right. Coach Humph says the elephants in the room, all puns intended, in regard to how explosive the offense is next season are the 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. And we are going to have a very professional segue to the offensive line search for a offensive line coach to replace Harry Easton. And I was listening to you guys on Power Hour too, and Mike was I think rightfully concerned just because there's questions at the 2 guard spots. I am of the opinion that no team returns, usually, just generally speaking. Most teams don't return all 5 of their offensive linemen. It just so happens that Notre Dame is returning 2 of their best offensive linemen in Joe Alt and Blake Fisher. Zeke Carrell has a ton of starts at center, so that's a really good spot to start from. And given the rest of the roster and players available, it's unacceptable to me that Notre Dame would have a poor offensive line next year, regardless.
No, they
of
should
who
be one of the.
They should be one of the best, Jamie. So, who to you, I guess, is kind of out there that you have your eye on? Who it's like, Notre Dame, go after this guy. Go after this guy, right? Who is it that you're kind of eyeing down? It's like, I don't care where he's at. I don't care what he's doing or how good his job supposedly is. Notre Dame can go get him. And it doesn't have to be some, go take, Justin Fry, even though maybe that's someone that you should call and be like, hey, do you want to come over here or not? Just who do you have your eye on? Who are you thinking about?
I mean, there's just a lot. I think the one thing that's, really good is first of all, it's a very, because you have those 2 tackles, because of the way they recruit, because of the way they've traditionally recruited and developed players. It's a job that people should want, even more so than the offensive coordinator job. Like it really is a premier job in terms of a position coach, and they should be able to pay pretty much whatever they want. Yeah. It's saying that, I certainly Justin Fry would be a great hire. Also has a connection was at Boston College. I know he was at Boston College with Ryan Day, so that's part of it, but he was also at Boston College with Al Washington. So he's got a connection there. Alex Atkins, who's at Florida State, is a guy who's, I don't think that he would probably leave because he's got the OC title there too, even though he's not the play caller. But he has a connection to Gerad Parker, worked with him in the past, I believe at UT Martin, maybe Marshall too. But and he's done a tremendous job there. Those are kind of like Mike Bloomgren, who's like, whatever, probably not going to leave Rice for a head coaching job for it. But if we're talking about pie in the sky, people that whatever, those are the kind of guys that I think you would, say like, absolutely. Those are like, wow, those would be like needle moving hires. But I really like the Minnesota guy, Brian Callahan. I think he does a tremendous job with not a lot of talent. I really like Huff, who's the Washington offensive line guy. He does an awesome job with their group. Was at Boise State before that. Routinely develops guys into NFL players, into all Pac-12, all conference level players that weren't the highest rated guy. They had one of the better offensive lines in college football. Also, I always look at when there's a guy who's like, man, this guy's been here for, 3 head coaches and he keeps getting retained. It's like, he must be pretty good at his job. And he's been one of those guys. Right. So I think he would be a big time hire. Honestly, I think you could probably list like 10 guys that I think would be awesome hires for Notre Dame. I will, agree with Coach Humph. Like, I think it's extremely important thing. And it's the kind of thing too, where when we're grading and looking back at Parker and we're looking at the offense as a whole, this is going to Matt Luke there. Nicholas Henderson mentioned, yes, he would be a big time hire. Is he wanting to get back into football? He walked away because he was like, I believe it was like kind of like mental health reasons or whatever, wanted to be around his family and stuff like that. Is he ready to kind of get back into it? Was it Georgia? Was it Ole Miss before that? He has been like an SEC guy. So, is he a fit? You never know. But, certainly he's like big time recruiter, great recruiter. So I think he would be another one. But, there's just a lot of guys like that I think if – I would be shocked if Notre Dame didn't make a hire that was a guy with like a really, really good, strong reputation.
And I have to think that Notre Dame is very motivated right now to that. Look, the narrative is the narrative, be it what it is, right or wrong. The narrative is the narrative that they are being cheap right now. That's just true.
Yeah.
I think they would be very motivated to go out there and throw money around and be like, you know what? Look, we'll spend money. Look what we did for get this guy, Alex Atkins, right? He's the OC at Florida State. Well, we threw a boatload of money at him, and now he's coming to be our offensive line coach, running game coordinator. To the previous question before, like that's how you would need to give someone like him the role, right? A role like that, a title like that to kind of lure him over. It's like, throw money around, right? Like that won't that should be the the way that they're doing this. I think to change the narrative, to change the way people are talking about things. And so, and I think Marcus Freeman too. I mean, I think from given what he said at the press conference, right? Full-throated support of Jack Swarbrick, really gave him that just like no wiggle room in terms of like there's no separation between what Swarbrick said and what I'm saying, right? And look, and Christian McCollum for ISD, he wrote a really good column about how Freeman is the ultimate Notre Dame guy, right? And it was the ultimate Notre Dame move on his part. I suggest everyone goes to Irish Sports Daily and checks that out. Column. Yeah, it was a very good column and some good reporting by him as well. And something that, people during that whole kind of process, a lot of people ask, like, is Freeman, or not even ask, like, Freeman must be upset. Freeman must be mad. And a lot of people are speculating about that. And how he feels, I don't really know. But one thing we didn't see, there were no leaks. There's no leaks about, Freeman is privately feeling X. Freeman is privately feeling. However he feels, he didn't let it be known to reporters. It never got put out there that he was actually mad. People surmised it, but that was never actually reported.
No,
at least by us. And
I don't think it was reported by anybody.
I don't think it was reported by anyone.
If they reported it, they reported it falsely.
Yeah. Right. And it's not like I'm checking on what everyone.
I assumed he was mad.
I assumed it too. I assumed it too, but we don't know that to be true.
Yeah.
And there were no leaks about it. And then he comes out and he gives the full-throated support of Swarbrick and the support that Swarbrick gives him. Right. But given that that's his public face, he could go the guy, hey, we need to make a big hire now. This is important. And that we need to go get these guys. And these are the guys that I want. And these are the guys that can come in. And I think I'll use the word leverage, but I don't know if it's like, I'm leveraging this or whatever, but I think he has the sway. Let's put it like that. I think he has the sway because of the way that he treated the process to go ahead and do that. And I think that's a move Notre Dame should make there. Because like you said, it's super important position for them. And you guys said on Power Hour, it's probably the most important position group that isn't a coordinator, like coach on staff. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And also too, it's the one people want. Everybody wants top 5 recruiting classes.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody wants to get a top 5 recruiting class. Notre Dame's really the best way to get there. Is the easiest way for Notre Dame to get there is to sign like more elite offensive linemen, because Notre Dame routinely lands blue chips, right? They land 4 and 5-star guys all the time, right? Or 4-star guys all the time. They don't land a lot of the guys who are there's less Blake Fishers around. And some of it is because, there's less Blake Fishers around literally in terms of the area, but some of it is they just haven't landed those guys. Right?
Yeah.
So if they can get somebody else who can help land those guys, I think that would be big. I think that would be, very important. But I also think like when you're looking at guys who have developed players and got guys to kind of reach past what their expectations are in terms of where their ranking was and whatever, guys who know how to evaluate and know how to develop players, like that is the most important thing, like out of anything. Like you need to be able to find somebody who has that track record of like individual development, unit development. And because Notre Dame has a chance to be, should be, and I wrote this piece, it was like about a month ago or a couple months ago or whatever, that was like the like 7 or 8 things that like all of like the national championships have had. And it's like, maybe they don't have one exception. And like, I think it was like out of the last, since the CFP era, all but 2 were at the very least Joe Moore Award semifinalists. Right. Or maybe it was like only one wasn't a semifinalist. Right. And then all the rest were, it's like, and then something like 7 out of 9 or something were Joe Moore finalists. Right. Like, so basically in the top 3 offensive lines of college football. And Notre Dame should be in that every year, really. Right. That's where Notre Dame should be. That should be the standard. At the bare minimum, on a bad year, should be a semifinalist. Right. And in most years should be a finalist. And so that's a box that should automatically be checked for them. And I mean, not that they're going to be like, who gets us to this Joe Moore Award, whatever, but that's kind of like, if they're not hiring someone with the explicit goal of like, we're going to be the best offensive line in college football year after year. We're going to be, I know Notre Dame, everyone loves to do like O-line U or whatever, but Notre Dame is O-line U in a certain extent, but they're not in terms of like, I think like, Alabama plays better offensive line than consistently than whatever. And maybe part of it is because of talent or whatever, but it's like, they do. So they could say they're O-line U better than Notre Dame, and Notre Dame should want that title. They probably could have that title, and that should be the goal.
Right. So, and because Marcus Freeman is leaning into it so much, then it has to be a huge priority, and look, the name Chris Watt is out there, right? And I think we need to be careful about not like we dismissed Gerad Parker, right? We shouldn't dismiss Chris Watt. We shouldn't. We talked about how that would be you're inexperienced on offensive coordinator, and now you're going to be inexperienced on the offensive line coach.
I think it would be a pretty big risk to do.
It would be a huge risk. And here's the other part too, is just you're really taking a chance. And a lot of people, and I saw in the chat earlier, I apologize for not crediting this person, but like we talk a lot about, inexperience, higher ceiling, lower floor, that sort of thing. We don't, just because you're taking and this is kind of why the Parker risk is especially risky, I guess, because we don't know the ceiling is higher. That's the other part. And that would be true of Chris Watt too. Why do we know the ceiling is higher? Why do we know the ceiling is higher with Gerad Parker? We don't know that. Why would we think that? Right? We can't assume it
we just don't know what his ceiling is.
Right. That's what makes it risky, right? Because what's like Marcus Freeman is a higher ceiling, I guess, because of the recruiting piece.
Yeah.
And that makes him a higher ceiling because he is so much more dynamic of a recruiter. Right. And look, I think there's also that should be factored in with Gerad Parker as well. Like he is a plus recruiter where Tommy Rees was kind of, I don't know, a check plus, I guess. Like, in sometimes in grading, you would do check plus, just plus, right? Like, I think Rees was either a check or a check plus, and Gerad Parker is above that. And I think that's a big part of him as well. I think his recruiting prowess is a lot better than Rees, but it just, we don't know from a play calling standpoint, his style, we don't know that lends itself to a higher ceiling. And so we also don't know that with Chris Watt either. Like that could be a risk in that the ceiling is lower and the floor is lower.
Yeah.
And that's not a direction you want to go. But I don't want to outright dismiss it either, because frankly, it could be him, right? We don't know that, right? There was no way I thought it would be Gerad Parker when the OC search started.
No, I don't think so.
Right. You would just assume. So it's I think what should have happened is Notre Dame should not have sent out the email. I think that was a bad email. I think that was a bad idea by Jack Swarbrick, which is usually like that's a rare. That's an unforced error on his part. He usually doesn't do things like that are just like, why'd you do that? And especially the way it was written and all those things. I think it's
referencing a movie from 1988, always good too.
No, yeah, like what? Come on, baby, like don't do that.
Yeah.
I think if it just had been Marcus Freeman, if they just let it pass, Marcus Freeman, then Gerad Parker, I think people would have felt a lot better about the situation. But that's not what they did. So, we move forward as a podcast, as a show, right? We'll be talking more about the offensive line. I think eventually Gino Guidugli will be officially announced as the OC, or not the OC, the quarterback coach. And we'll talk about that a little bit. I think he has a lot to offer. Rajon says email was a bit of a temper tantrum. I agree with that. So we'll be talking about that, offensive line, quarterback coaching. Maybe we'll finally get into some recruiting, Jamie, topics other than coaching searches and that sort of thing. And that's what we'll be doing.
Well, who knows? Maybe we'll know who the O-line guy is on Thursday.
Maybe we'll know who the O-line guy is on Thursday. We could talk about that, and we could talk about all those fun things. And I don't know, man. It looked for a while there. It looked like there might be a DC search too, but that for the moment, it seems like that's not a thing. Knock on wood. So,
although I mean, in saying that, there's like, it's wild when you're just like, I saw like, the Raiders just fired their defensive line coach. I'm like, he had a long time to figure this out.
Yeah.
And then I think not the Vikings, I think the Browns fired their special teams coach. And like, there's stuff still going on. The coaching carousel is still moving. And if you've seen so Stanford lost their O-line guy to the NFL now. Cincinnati lost their OC who came over from Iowa State. He went to the NFL. There's a lot of stuff that could still happen. So, we'll react to it when it happens.
Yeah. Brennan says, Swarbrick ending with Bernie Sanders. I am once again asking for your financial support. Yeah. At the end of the email was a choice. It definitely was a choice. So, all right, guys, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button. If you check us out on Apple or Spotify, subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. 5-star reviews, please. That would be great. I get, the reviews and the ratings. That's all good for the algorithms and the gods and all those things. So hit us up on that. Check the link in the show description. Thank you so much. We'll be back on Thursday talking offensive line, quarterback coaches, and all those other things. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.